I'm Jen. I'm the kinda old autistic lady. And the topic of today's video is the difference, or at least one potential difference, between what it means to be kind for an autistic person versus a neurotypical person, or a non autistic person who may be otherwise neurodiverse, may also relate to this, or may fall more in the neurotypical camp depending on the individual. In order to keep the video short, I want to focus on one particular act of kindness that autistic people tend to do, I believe, far more often than neurotypical people do, and that neurotypical people tend to find offense at. And that is offering unsolicited advice or showing people how to do something either more quickly, more comprehensively, and so on. So, for example, I think it's pretty common that for neurotypical people who are either in the workplace, in a family, in any kind of relationship, that unsolicited advice is generally considered rude. So if neurotypical person A is in the process of doing something, it could be creative, it could be work related, it could be really anything, but where there's some sort of an end goal with whatever the action is, they typically want to either do things the way they've always done them before or discover for themselves, hey, oh, here's a new way I can do this, and then have that satisfaction of discovering, oh, wow, I found this new way to do it. But it's a self-discovery. And that's not to say that autistic people don't get enjoyment out of self-discovery as well when understanding how to do something better, more efficiently, and so on. But if one autistic person, and again, these are all general statements, but if one autistic person says to another autistic person who they see doing something in a way that could be more efficient, that there might be maybe some sort of a hack for, or some sort of shortcut for, anything like that, if I, as an autistic person, am working on some sort of a project, and someone comes up to me unsolicited and says, oh, I see you're doing X a certain way, there's an easier way to do it, or there's a faster way to do it, or hey, there's another way to do it that I know how to do. And as long as they're saying something like, do you have time for me to show you, or are you interested in me showing you, I'm super receptive to it if I have the time in order to figure out what they're talking about. Because not to say that self-discovery isn't awesome, because it is, and I love to discover new things, but there's something to be said about conserving energy, because there are some things that are more difficult when a person's autistic. Conserving energy in ways that can be conserved to get to the end product of the learning more quickly. Now, if the person just comes up to me and says, hey, there's another way to do this, without explaining that they are also aware of the fact that I might not want this feedback, if I have a relationship with that person, I'm not going to think that's rude at all. If I don't have a relationship with the person at all, like if it's just a stranger walking up to me, I might be a little bit reserved, because it's like, why is the stranger talking to me, first of all? But if it's an acquaintance and they're just coming up to me and I don't know, is this person neurodivergent? Are they neurotypical? What's their background? I still, as an autistic person, don't get offended when someone says to me, did you know there's an easier way to do this? Or did you know there's an alternative way to do this that might come in handy in what you're doing? Because I like learning. And if I can learn from somebody else, fantastic. I'm happy with it. The only time I get offended is if somebody makes it seem like the way I'm doing it is wrong, if in fact what I'm doing is not wrong. Because there's a lot of different ways to solve the same problem. There's a lot of different ways to make a creative endeavor, to do all kinds of different projects. And as long as it's not like, hey, fault finding that I'm doing it wrong, unsolicited, I don't view that as unkind or rude at all. I appreciate it. However, I think with in situations where the person getting the advice is neurotypical, I think they require that touch, that warmness of, hey, are you open to some advice on this? And so on and so forth. Or, I noticed you were doing X, and I happen to be a guru in X, and I would love to share my knowledge of some tips, tricks, hacks, whatever with you. Are you interested in, sitting down with me and learning some things? I think when it's approached in that way, neurotypical people also really do enjoy getting unsolicited feedback from people, as long as they know that it's done with the intention to help them. I think where neurodivergent people, particularly autistic people, can sometimes run afoul is just going up to somebody and saying, there's another way to do this, or there's a faster way to do this, there's a better way to do this. And I think that if it's two autistic people talking to each other and they both know that the other is autistic, I think that there is a social barrier that's lifted where it's understood that, of course, the person trying to give you advice has your best interest in mind, because otherwise they wouldn't be spending the time to try to help you. I think that's an understood thing between autistic people that isn't always the case when it's either a mixed conversation with neurotypical and autistic, or two neurotypical people. And so, of course, in lots of life, we don't know, is somebody neurotypical? Are they autistic? Are they otherwise neurodiverse? So I guess where I land with this is, with scripting, I think it's okay to be authentic as an autistic person and script a little bit when it makes sense. And in this case, the scripting that I do is to pretend that the other person is neurotypical. Whether or not they are, I have no way of knowing unless I know this person really well and they've just, disclosed that to me. So I tend to err on the side of, I have a lot of experience with what you're doing. If you want to get together sometime, and I try to make it more like it's a back and forth. Do you want to learn from each other? Because maybe the person that I see, they're doing something a particular way. Maybe it's not that I know better. I'm just seeing a glimpse into what they're doing, and they've got very specific reasons for why they're doing it that way. So unless I know that I have more experience than the other person, I try to make it a reciprocal thing. Like, do you want to learn from each other? We both use this tool. We're both, content creators. We're both writers. We're both whatever it is. Both using the software together. And so the scripting of trying to make it mutual, if in fact I'm okay with it being mutual and have time for it to be mutual, I think works the best for me. Where I kind of get in trouble sometimes is I don't always have time to make it reciprocal. I just notice that somebody is doing something in a way that, from my perspective, could be done better, could be done faster. And, it might be just that I'm an uninterested party, or it could be I have a part of a project I'm trying to do, and I can't do my part until the other person does their part, and so I have an interest in helping them speed up. And here's where I think I'm trying to learn right now as a late diagnosed autistic person, when the help is appreciated, when the help is not appreciated. And a lot of that for me falls into, well, is the person late in delivering whatever it is to me if I'm waiting on their piece of it to do my piece? If they're on schedule and they're not late, I have to bite my tongue sometimes and just walk away and say, I just need to wait until it's the due date of this thing that the person said they would get it to me. And maybe after the fact, when I have more time for it to be reciprocal, or at least approached like I want it to be reciprocal. Because otherwise, if the other person isn't in the right place to receive that message, then I'm making an enemy out of somebody, or they think that I'm overstepping my bounds or whatnot. But I will say this. I think that it's an act of kindness, especially between autistic people, to try to help each other. And if the other person says, you know what, I don't need your help. Okay, great. But as long as we can approach it from, it's a kindness we're trying to do for each other, I think that it works out really well. And in fact, if I'm doing something and I know that another person could have been helping me in a way that, wouldn't be like a superiority kind of a thing, I almost feel offended when people don't. So I have gotten myself in trouble with this throughout my life, being the giver of unsolicited advice. And this is where being diagnosed as a late diagnosed autistic person, where I wish I had known earlier, even if it had still been an adult, but earlier, because I think enemy isn't quite the right word, but I think I've rubbed people the wrong way to where they don't want me to see them work until they've got the end product, if they're on a peer-to-peer relationship with me. If it's somebody I'm supposed to be formally coaching, the whole dynamic is different than what I'm talking about in this video. But I have to social script in order to understand and take a step back and say, is this person going to view this help as a kindness? If yes, and I'm sure of it, I offer my help. If maybe, I approach it with a little bit of social scripting. If I really don't know, what I'm learning now that I know that the reason I'm getting this kind of response is because not everybody appreciates this, is when I have to bite my tongue a little bit and say, you know what? People don't like unsolicited advice unless you've got a good enough relationship that, and I say you, but I mean me, that I can be of help to that other person. So the closing thought for today is, I'd like to hear from you. I'd like you to leave me a comment about, if you are autistic, what your opinions on this are. Do you like getting unsolicited advice from people, or unsolicited tips, tricks, hacks, whatever? Or do you just really do better if you're just in the process of learning something on your own and you want to be left alone? Because I think there are probably some individual differences there. Autistic people are not a monolith. But I'm curious to know, of my viewers, what the preference is there. And I also want to know, if somebody else sees you doing something and you're not particularly struggling, how you view that if they offer help. And if you are struggling and they offer help unsolicited, what your view of that is. I'm really curious, because all I have is my own experience on which to draw right now, and I'm trying to figure it out as I go. So if you're finding the content helpful, like, subscribe, sign up for notifications, and thanks for watching.